Admiral Cathara Voss stood before the observation deck of the Peacekeeper Prime, watching as the last of humanity's first armada aligned in perfect formation. 300 vessels of unprecedented design stretched across the void, their hulls gleaming with adaptive armor that could withstand any known weapon in the galaxy. Each ship bore the insignia of the Terran Peace Initiative, a clasped hand beneath 7 stars, representing humanity's commitment to ending the endless conflicts that had plagued the Outer Rim for centuries. The galaxy had been bleeding for too long. The Velthari Confederacy and the Quindal Empire had been locked in a territorial war for 47 years, their battles consuming entire star systems. The nomadic Reshvik clans raided supply lines with impunity, while the mysterious Ethmorian collective watched from the shadows, striking whenever weakness showed. Dozens of smaller conflicts simmered between colony worlds, trade disputes escalating into orbital bombardments. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Galactic Mediation Council," reported Communications Officer Hazel Meridian, her voice crisp through the bridge's ambient hum. Voss nodded, her weathered features reflecting years of military service before. Humanity had chosen the path of enforced peace. The hologram materialized. Council Speaker Nix Vell of the neutral Astari Republic, his crystalline features expressing what passed for diplomatic concern among his species. "Admiral Voss, the Council appreciates Earth's ambitious initiative. However, we must stress that military intervention, regardless of intent, may provoke unforeseen—" "With respect, Speaker Nix Vell," Voss interrupted, "the Council has had 2 centuries to mediate these conflicts. How many billion souls have died while diplomats debate?" The Astari's chromatic skin shifted to deeper purples. Irritation. "The Terran Republic has been a galactic citizen for barely a century. Your species' solution to every problem cannot be the application of superior firepower." Voss gestured toward the view screen where her armada maintained perfect formation. "This isn't about firepower. It's about presence. When children see a playground bully, they look for the teacher. We're going to be that teacher." What the Council didn't know, what only the highest echelons of Terran command understood, was the true nature of humanity's technological breakthrough. The ships weren't just armed with advanced weaponry, they carried the Prometheus protocols, AI-assisted tactical systems that could analyze and counter any military strategy in real time. More crucially, each vessel was equipped with pacification fields, devices that could shut down weapon systems across entire fleets without permanent damage. Lieutenant Commander Tor Bridgman, Voss's tactical officer, approached with a datapad. "Ma'am, long-range sensors are picking up the Velthari 3rd Battle Group. They're moving toward the disputed Kepler 442 system." "And the Quindal response?" 7th Fleet just dropped out of hyperspace on the system's opposite edge. They're positioning for another siege. Voss felt the familiar weight of command settle on her shoulders. Kepler 442 hosted 3 billion civilians across its habitable worlds. If the Velthari and Quindal clashed there, the death toll would be catastrophic. "Signal. The fleet," she ordered. "We jump in 30 minutes. Today, we show the galaxy what peace looks like." As the first armada prepared for its maiden mission, none aboard could imagine that their arrival at Kepler 442 would be remembered not as the beginning of peace, but as the spark that ignited the most devastating war in galactic history. The greatest tragedies often begin with the noblest intentions. The Kepler 442 system erupted in chaos the moment the first armada translated from hyperspace. 300 human vessels materialized in perfect delta formation between the opposing fleets, their arrival so precisely timed that it seemed impossible to both the Velthari and Quindal commanders. Admiral Voss immediately opened channels to both forces. "This is Admiral Cathara Voss of the Terran Peace Initiative. I'm ordering both fleets to withdraw beyond the heliopause. These worlds are under the protection of Earth's first armada. Fleet Commander Zorath Kess of the Velthari." Third Battle Group was the first to respond, his serpentine features twisted with indignation on the view screen. You dare interfere in Velthari territorial expansion? These systems were promised to us under the Corinth Accords. The Corinth Accords were violated when your forces bombarded civilian infrastructure on Kepler 442c, Voss replied firmly. That makes this a humanitarian intervention. High Admiral Lixandra of the Quindal 7th Fleet's transmission crackled with interference. Humans, your presence here is an act of war against the Quindal Empire. These systems are sovereign Quindal, territory awarded by right of prior colonization. Lieutenant Commander Bridgman leaned close to Voss. Ma'am, both fleets are powering weapons. The Velthari are targeting our port wing. The Quindal are locking onto our starboard formations. Voss had prepared for this moment. Activate pacification. Fields. Full-spectrum deployment. Across the first Armada, invisible energy waves pulsed outward. The effect was immediate and stunning. Every weapon system on both alien fleets simply shut down. Missiles went inert mid-flight. Energy cannons powered down, and defensive screens flickered out of existence. But Admiral Voss had made a critical miscalculation. The pacification fields were designed based on human understanding of galactic technology. What Terran scientists didn't know was that the Quindal had recently integrated bio-neural weapon systems that relied on living tissue rather than traditional electronics. When the pacification fields interfaced with these biological components, the result wasn't deactivation. It was excruciating pain transmitted through the ship's neural networks to every Quindal crew member. High Admiral Lixandra's scream of agony echoed across the communication channels as her flagship's bio-neural systems overloaded. Across the Quindal fleet, similar cries erupted as crews writhed in synthetic torment, their minds flooded with feedback from dying ship minds. "What have you done?" Lixandra gasped, her usually composed features contorted with rage and pain. "You've murdered our ship's souls!" Before Voss could respond, the tactical display exploded with new contacts. The Quindal distress signals had been automatically transmitted across their quantum communication network, reaching not just military command, but every Quindal colony within 50 light years. "Admiral," Communications Officer Meridian reported, her voice tight with concern. "We're receiving emergency broadcasts from 17 Quindal worlds. They're calling us soul killers." The term would become infamous across the galaxy. In Quindal culture, ships weren't just vessels. They were living entities with bio-neural consciousness. To them, humanity had just committed mass murder of sentient beings. Fleet Commander Kess of the Velthari, seeing his ancient enemies crippled, made a tactical decision that would escalate everything. Despite his own ships being disabled, he ordered his Marines to deploy in assault shuttles, intending to board and capture the defenseless Quindal vessels. "Belay that order," Voss commanded over open channels. "Any movement toward the disabled fleet will be considered an act of aggression." But Kess was already committed. Hundreds of Velthari assault craft launched, their biological propulsion systems unaffected by the pacification fields. Voss faced an impossible choice. Allow a massacre of helpless Quindal crews, or fire upon the Velthari forces she was supposed to be protecting from each other. "All ships," she ordered grimly. "Selective targeting on Velthari assault craft. Disable, don't destroy." The first Armada's precise weapons fire turned the Velthari shuttles into floating debris within minutes. But the psychological damage was done. To the Velthari, humanity had suddenly revealed itself as the Quindal's secret ally, explaining the impossibly perfect timing of their arrival. As rescue operations began and the wounded fleets limped away from Kepler 442, 3 different species were preparing for war, each convinced that humanity had betrayed them. The peace Admiral Voss sought was already dying, killed by good intentions and fatal misunderstandings. Within 72 hours of the Kepler 442, incident, the galaxy began to fracture along lines that had taken centuries to establish. Admiral Voss found herself recalled to Earth, the Peacekeeper Prime racing toward Sol, while emergency transmissions flooded the communications array. Status. Report, she demanded as the bridge crew struggled to process the cascading intelligence reports. Lieutenant Commander Bridgman's face was pale as he read from his tactical display. The Quindal have declared a state of total war against humanity. They're calling it the Crusade against the Soul Killers. 17 core worlds have pledged their entire military assets. Communications Officer Meridian looked up from her station. It gets worse, Admiral. The Velthari are claiming we're a Quindal puppet species, created to give them plausible deniability for war crimes. They've activated their ancient alliance with the Reshvik clans. And the Ethmorian Collective? Voss asked, though she dreaded the answer. Radio silence from all their territories, Meridian replied, but long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in the Shadow Nebula. They're mobilizing something. As the Peacekeeper Prime entered the Sol system, Voss was greeted by a sight that chilled her to the bone. Earth's orbital shipyards, which had taken decades to construct the first Armada, were already being retooled for war production. Emergency conscription orders were flooding civilian networks, and the Prometheus protocols, originally designed for peacekeeping, were being rewritten for total warfare. President Alara Dawnfield met Voss in the secure briefing room beneath Geneva Command. The president's usually composed demeanor showed cracks of strain as she gestured toward the holographic display showing galactic military deployments. Cathera, tell me how an operation designed to save lives has put humanity at war with half the galaxy. The pacification fields interacted with Quindal bioneural technology in ways our scientists never predicted, Voss explained. To them, we didn't disable their weapons. We tortured their ships to death. Dawnfield closed her eyes. And the Velthari? They believe we're Quindal allies because of our timing and because we protected Quindal crews from their boarding attempts. To them, this looks like an elaborate false flag operation. Defense Minister Calix Oberyn entered the briefing room with a grim expression. It's worse than we thought. The Astari Republic has just withdrawn from the Galactic Mediation Council. They're claiming that Earth's premature intervention has destabilized the entire galactic peace framework. The holographic display updated, showing new intelligence. The conflict was spreading like a virus through the galaxy's political networks. Species that had maintained neutrality for generations were choosing sides, old alliances were crumbling, and dormant territorial disputes were flaring into open warfare. The Velthari have convinced 12 client species that humanity is a Quindal bioweapon, Oberyn continued. Meanwhile, the Quindal are telling their allies that we're some kind of synthetic soul killer species created by the Ethmorians. What about our actual allies? Voss asked. Dawnfield's expression darkened. The Centauri Federation is remaining neutral. The Alpha Cygni Republic has closed its borders to all traffic. The Kepler Trade Consortium has suspended all human contracts pending security review. Dr. Yuki Nakamura, the lead scientist behind the pacification field technology, appeared via hologram from the Luna Research Station. Admiral, President, I've been analyzing the bioneural feedback data from the Quindal ships. The interaction was worse than we initially understood. Their ships don't just have biological components. They have genuine artificial consciousness. We didn't just cause pain. We caused what they would consider murder. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had stumbled into a war not through malice or greed, but through a catastrophic failure to understand the nature of the species they sought to help. Options? President Dawnfield asked. Admiral Voss studied the tactical displays. We can try diplomatic contact, but given the scale of the misunderstanding, words alone won't be enough. Or we can prepare for a defensive war and hope we can survive, long enough to prove our intentions. There's a third option, Dr. Nakamura interjected quietly. We could demonstrate the pacification field's true purpose by turning them on ourselves. Show the galaxy that we're willing to disable our own weapons as proof of peaceful intent. That would leave us defenseless, Oberyn protested. We're about to face the entire galaxy in warfare, Voss replied grimly. We might already be defenseless, as alarms began sounding across Earth's defense network. The first reports arrived of alien fleets massing at the edge of human space. The war Admiral Voss had tried to prevent was coming to humanity's doorstep, and Earth's children would have to fight for their very survival against enemies who saw them as monsters. The noblest intentions had paved the road to galactic hell. The first coordinated assault on human space began at 0347 Earth Standard Time, 3 weeks after the Kepler 442 incident. Admiral Voss watched from the command center of Luna Defense Station as the tactical display erupted with enemy contacts across 17 different star systems simultaneously. It's a classic pincer movement on a galactic scale, reported Fleet. Admiral Marcus Holloway, humanity's highest-ranking military officer. The Quindal are hitting our core colonies from the galactic east, while the Velthari-Reshvik alliance is striking from the Rim territories. The scale of the assault was staggering. Over 4,000 alien vessels had coordinated their attacks. Across light years of space, their timing so precise it suggested months of preparation, or access to intelligence humanity hadn't known existed. Sir, Communications Officer Meridian's voice crackled through the speakers. We're receiving surrender demands from both fleets. The Quindal want us to submit to purification trials for soul murder. The Velthari are demanding we confess our puppethood to the Quindal conspiracy. Voss felt the bitter irony. Even facing annihilation, their enemies couldn't agree on what humanity's crime actually was. Captain Zara Whitemoon of the Retribution's Edge appeared on the holographic display from the Proxima Centauri system, her ship's bridge sparking with battle damage. Admiral, they're not trying to destroy our colonies, they're trying to capture them intact. The Quindal are using some kind of neural binding technology on civilian populations. The revelation hit Voss like a physical blow. The Quindal weren't just seeking military victory, they were attempting to cure human consciousness, believing that humanity's ability to kill souls was some kind of technological augmentation that could be reversed. Status of the Second and Third Armadas? President Dawnfield's voice came through secure channels from Earth. Fleet Admiral Holloway grimaced. Second Armada is engaging Velthari forces in the Wolf 359 system. They're learning to adapt to our pacification fields faster than expected. Third Armada is still 3 days out from the Vega system. Dr. Nakamura's image appeared on the communication grid, her face drawn with exhaustion. Admiral, I've been analyzing battle recordings from the front lines. The Quindal ships aren't just avoiding the pacification fields, they're using organic shielding that actually feeds on the energy we're projecting. They've turned our peacekeeping technology into a weapon against us, Voss realized. Worse, Nakamura continued, the Velthari have been studying our tactical patterns. They're predicting our formations, our response times, even our supply routes. Someone's been feeding them information about human military doctrine. The implications were staggering. Either humanity had a traitor in their highest ranks, or one of their supposed neutral allies was playing a deeper game. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Bridgman reported from his tactical station. Incoming priority transmission from the Kepler 442 system. It's High Admiral Lixandra. The Quindal commander's image materialized, but she looked different, older, marked by what appeared to be ritual scarification across her face and hands. Behind her, Voss could see what looked like a shrine constructed from the bio-neural components of destroyed ships. Admiral Cathara Voss, Lixandra began, her voice carrying a weight of religious fervor. I speak to you from the memorial of murdered souls. Your species has awakened something in us that has Been dormant for 1,000 years, the drive of sacred vengeance. Hi, Admiral. There has to be a way to— Silence! Lixandra's command cut through Voss's words. You will hear the terms of your species' trial. Surrender your pacification technology to our bio-neural engineers. Submit your military leadership to consciousness purification. Accept Quindal governance of all human colonies. In return, your civilian populations will be allowed to live under our protection. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. They want to lobotomize our leadership and turn humanity into a client species. President Dawnfield's voice was barely controlled. And they honestly believe they're being merciful. Fleet Admiral Holloway's expression hardened. Then we show them what human warfare actually looks like. We've been fighting with one hand tied behind our backs, trying to minimize casualties. Maybe it's time to take the gloves off. Sir, Captain Whitemoon's voice crackled through the communications array. I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the Shadow Nebula. The Ethmorian Collective is finally making their move. As the tactical display updated with new contacts, Voss realized that humanity's war was about to expand beyond anything they had imagined. The Ethmorians had been silent observers for decades, but their sudden military deployment suggested they had their own agenda in the chaos humanity had accidentally unleashed. All fleets, Admiral Voss commanded, implement Protocol Omega. If we're going to be labeled as monsters, we might as well fight like the apex predator's evolution made us. The war for humanity's survival was about to enter its deadliest phase, and the species that had sought to bring peace to the galaxy was preparing to demonstrate why Earth had never known lasting peace in its own history. Protocol Omega had been theoretical until the moment Admiral Voss authorized its implementation. Developed in the deepest classified sections of Terran Command, it was humanity's acknowledgement of their own nature, not as peacekeepers, but as the galaxy's most efficient predators. Within hours of the protocol's activation, human tactics shifted from defensive positioning to something the galaxy had never witnessed. Captain Zara Whitemoon's Retribution's Edge demonstrated the change first, abandoning traditional fleet formations to engage in what military historians would later term pack hunting. Target the Quindal bio-neural relay ships first, Whitemoon commanded as her squadron ghosted through the asteroid fields of the Proxima system. Cut their fleet coordination, then hit their supply vessels, make them feel isolated before we take them apart. The human understanding of psychological warfare proved devastatingly effective. While other species fought for territory or resources, humans fought to break their enemies' will to continue. Within days, Quindal commanders were reporting unprecedented levels of crew anxiety and desertion. But it was the Ethmorian Collective's entry into the conflict that revealed the true scope of the conspiracy against humanity. Admiral Voss stood in the war room aboard the rebuilt Peacekeeper Prime, now bristling, with weapons that had never been intended for her original peacekeeping mission. The holographic display showed the massive Ethmorian fleet emerging from the Shadow Nebula, but their deployment pattern made no tactical sense. They're not moving to engage human forces, reported Intelligence Officer Commander Lydia Cross. They're positioning themselves between our fleets and the Quindal core worlds. Dr. Nakamura's tired voice came through the speakers from her laboratory. Admiral, I've been analyzing the energy signatures from the Ethmorian ships. Their technology isn't just similar to our pacification fields. It's based on the same fundamental principles. The revelation hit the command staff like a thunderbolt. Are you saying they've been developing parallel technology? Voss asked. I'm saying they may have been developing it first, Nakamura replied grimly. The mathematical principles underlying our pacification fields. I've found references to them in ancient Ethmorian academic papers, published decades before humanity even achieved faster-than-light travel. Fleet Admiral Holloway's voice carried a dangerous edge. You're suggesting they stole our technology? I'm suggesting we may have unknowingly stolen theirs. The implications crashed over the command center, like a wave. If humanity had inadvertently based their peacekeeping technology on stolen Ethmorian research, then their entire moral justification for intervention had been built on a foundation of theft. Incoming transmission. Communications Officer Meridian announced. It's from the Ethmorian flagship. The figure that appeared on the holographic display was unlike any alien humanity had encountered. The Ethmorian collective consciousness spoke through a crystalline construct that seemed to shift between states of matter, its voice harmonizing with itself in impossible ways. Species designation, human. Collective designation, thieves of. The silent code. Your appropriation of our consciousness interference technology has destabilized galactic harmony for the final time. Admiral Voss found her voice. We never stole anything from your people. Our scientists developed the pacification fields independently. Negative. Analysis of your technology reveals direct incorporation of Ethmorian quantum consciousness algorithms. Your species' research was contaminated by data acquired during the first contact incident at Kepler 186. Commander Cross quickly accessed the historical records. Admiral, that was a routine deep space exploration mission 15 years ago. The crew reported discovering derelict technology but classified it as inert archaeological material. The derelict was not inert, the Ethmorian continued. It was a deliberate test. Your species' reaction to consciousness-affecting technology was being evaluated. The results were disappointing. The truth was devastating. Humanity's entire peacekeeping initiative had been based on technology they had unknowingly acquired from a species that had been testing their moral development. The Ethmorians had been watching, waiting to see what humanity would do with the power to control other species' consciousness. You gave us the technology to judge us, Voss realized. Correct. The test parameters were, would a young species use consciousness-affecting technology for domination or protection? Your species chose poorly. We chose protection. You chose interference. You assumed the right to impose your will on others without their consent. This is the fundamental definition of tyranny. As the Ethmorian fleet began to advance, Admiral Voss understood that humanity faced not just a war for survival, but a trial by a species that had been orchestrating events from the beginning. The Quindal and Velthari conflicts, the perfect timing of human intervention, even the tragic misunderstanding at Kepler 442, all of it had been orchestrated to test humanity's worthiness to exist as a spacefaring species. All human fleets, she commanded, prepare for Protocol Omega Maximum. If they want to judge us, they'll have to survive us first. But even as humanity prepared to unleash the full fury of their evolved predator nature, Admiral Voss couldn't shake the feeling that this too might be part of the test, and that humanity was still failing it. The Ethmorian trial by combat lasted 6 months and reshaped the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. Admiral Voss watched from the bridge of humanity's new flagship, Indomitable Truth, as the final phase of what historians would call the Consciousness War began in the shattered remains of the Kepler 442 system, where it had all started. The human fleets had evolved during the conflict, abandoning traditional formations for something far more terrifying. Each ship now fought as an individual hunter while maintaining perfect coordination with the fleet mind, a tactical doctrine that military analysts from a dozen species were already studying with equal parts admiration and horror. Status report. Voss commanded as the massive Ethmorian construct ships emerged from hyperspace. All fleets report ready, replied Fleet Admiral Holloway from his command vessel. The Quindal and Velthari have withdrawn to minimum safe distance, but they're observing. Whatever happens here, the entire galaxy is watching. Commander Cross looked up from her intelligence station. Admiral, we've finally decoded the Ethmorian communication protocols. They're not just judging humanity, they're broadcasting the entire conflict to the Galactic Mediation Council as evidence in some kind of cosmic court proceeding. The revelation struck Voss like a physical blow. We're not just fighting for our survival. We're fighting for our right to exist as a species. Dr. Nakamura's holographic image appeared, transmitted from the heavily shielded research vessel Prometheus. Admiral, I've made a breakthrough analyzing the consciousness-affecting technology. The Ethmorians didn't just give us the ability to disable weapons. They gave us the ability to interface directly with other species' consciousness. We could theoretically rewrite their thoughts, their memories, their fundamental nature, which is exactly what they expected us to do, Voss realized. They gave us the power of gods and waited to see if we'd use it. The ultimate test of a species' moral development, Dr. Nakamura agreed, and we passed the first part by choosing to disable rather than dominate. But then we interfered without understanding, and good intentions led to catastrophe. Voss felt the weight of her species' judgment approaching. Commander Cross, what are our actual chances of military victory? Cross consulted her tactical displays. Against the Ethmorian constructs? Minimal. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, and they've been studying our combat evolution throughout this entire conflict. But Admiral, she paused, her expression shifting. There might be another way. Explain. The consciousness-affecting technology works both ways. If we can interface with Ethmorian collective consciousness, we might be able to show them directly what happened at Kepler 442. Not our version or their interpretation, the actual events, complete with human emotional context and intentions. It was the most dangerous gambit imaginable. Opening human consciousness to direct interface with an alien collective mind could result in humanity losing its individual identity entirely. But it might be their only chance to prove that their species deserved to continue existing. The risk, Fleet Admiral Holloway began, is total species extinction if we fail, Voss finished. But we're facing that anyway. She paused, feeling the weight of command more heavily than ever. Dr. Nakamura, can you modify the pacification field generators for consciousness sharing instead of consciousness suppression? Theoretically, yes. But Admiral, whoever volunteers for the interface might not survive the process. Human consciousness isn't designed to merge with a collective mind. Voss looked around the bridge at her crew, officers who had followed her, from peacekeeping mission to Galactic War, who had watched their species' noblest intentions turn into its greatest trial. Then I'll do it myself. Admiral, you can't. I can, and I will. This war started with my decisions at Kepler 442. If humanity is going to be judged, then let me be the one to present our case. As the indomitable truth moved toward the massive Ethmorian construct ships, Admiral Voss prepared for the most important conversation in human history. The consciousness interface chamber had been hastily constructed using modified pacification field technology, creating a space where human and Ethmorian minds could meet without destroying each other. Admiral, came President Dawnfield's voice from Earth, the entire world is watching. Whatever happens, we're proud of the fight you've given. But as Voss entered the interface chamber, she realized that fighting might not be enough. Humanity would have to prove something far more difficult than their ability to wage war. They would have to prove their ability to accept responsibility for their mistakes and learn from them. The chamber activated, and Admiral Cathara Voss felt her consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of human experience, reaching toward a collective mind that had been waiting for this moment since before her species had learned to speak. The final test was about to begin, and this time, humanity couldn't win through superior firepower or tactical brilliance. They could only win by being genuinely worthy of survival. Admiral Cathara Voss experienced consciousness on a scale that human minds were never meant to comprehend. In the interface chamber, her individual awareness merged with the Ethmorian collective, and suddenly she was experiencing the galaxy from the perspective of a species that had watched civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. Through their collective memory, she saw the truth of the consciousness wars, Not the version humanity had lived through, but the vast tapestry of cause and effect that the Ethmorians had orchestrated across centuries. We have guided 17 species through this trial. The collective communicated, their thoughts flowing through Voss's mind like an ocean of ancient wisdom. Each was given the same gift, the power to affect consciousness itself. Each made their choice. Voss experienced flashes of other worlds, other species that had faced the same test. The elegant Silthari, who had used consciousness technology to create perfect harmony by erasing all individual thought. The militant Krexvar, who had turned it into a weapon of absolute control. The peaceful Yuldena, who had destroyed themselves rather than risk using such power. And us? Voss managed to project her thoughts into the collective consciousness. What did we choose? You chose interference disguised as protection. You decided that your judgment of right and wrong superseded the choices of others. The path to tyranny is paved with good intentions. The accusation hit Voss with the force of absolute truth. But, within the collective consciousness, she could also feel something unexpected. Curiosity. The Ethmorians were genuinely interested in humanity's response to their trial, but you did something the others did not. The collective continued. When faced with the consequences of your choice, you did not double down on your righteousness. You questioned yourselves. Through the consciousness link, Voss shared her memories of the war, not just the tactical decisions and strategic considerations, but the doubt, the guilt, the gradual realization that humanity's peacekeeping mission had been built on fundamental misunderstandings about the nature of peace itself. She showed them Admiral Holloway's anguish when he realized that Protocol Omega had turned humanity into the very thing they had sought to prevent, a species that imposed its will through superior force. She shared Dr. Nakamura's horror at discovering that their technology caused genuine suffering to bioneural entities. Most importantly, she shared her own moment of recognition that true peace could never be imposed from outside. It had to be chosen from within. You learned, the collective acknowledged, and Voss felt something like approval flowing through the link. Few species demonstrate the capacity for genuine growth during their trial. Then we pass? Voss asked, hope flickering. In her consciousness. You pass the first phase. Now comes the harder test. Can you live with the consequences of your learning? The consciousness interface suddenly expanded, and Voss found herself experiencing the perspectives of every species involved in the consciousness wars. She felt the Quindal's genuine grief for their murdered ships, their religious conviction that humanity represented an existential threat to all sentient consciousness. She experienced the Velthari's ancestral paranoia, their absolute certainty that they were facing another attempted genocide disguised as peacekeeping. But most overwhelmingly, she felt the fear, the galaxy-wide terror that humanity's intervention had triggered. Species that had maintained stable, if imperfect, balances for centuries suddenly faced the prospect of a young, powerful species that believed it knew better than everyone else. This is your true test, the collective explained. Not whether you can win through force, but whether you can heal what your good intentions broke. When Voss emerged from the consciousness interface, she found the bridge crew watching her with expressions of deep concern. She had been unconscious for 6 hours, and the Ethmorian constructs had moved into a defensive formation around the human fleet. Admiral? Fleet Admiral Holloway's voice was carefully controlled. What are your orders? Voss looked at the tactical display showing the positions of the various fleets. Quindal, Velthari, human, and Ethmorian ships, maintaining cautious distances from each other in the ruins of the Kepler 442 system. The same system where humanity's peacekeeping mission had begun and ended. Open channels to all fleets, she commanded. All of them. As the communication links established, Voss found herself facing the commanders, who had become her enemies. Through a series of tragic misunderstandings, High Admiral Lixandra of the Quindal, her scarred features still marked by ritual grief, Fleet Commander Zorath Kess of the Velthari, his serpentine form coiled with ancestral suspicion, and behind them the crystalline form of the Athmo,